Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. I'm so glad you're here, you guys. Help. Send help. I have reached the worst part of the book, and that's saying something because this whole book has been bad. I'm going to do my best to try to make this part of the recap fun, but I'm telling you now, this review will cover chapter 5, 6, and 7, and chapter 7 is the worst drivel I've ever seen. I'm sure you've heard the reviews. I've really tried to not read too many reviews of this book because I wanted to come to my own conclusions. But the reviews I've heard have been that it's completely biased, one-sided. Harry and Meghan can do no wrong. Okay. So you hear that and you think, oh, yeah, that sounds right. No. No, let me just tell you. That's exactly what it is. Harry and Meghan are painted as, I don't even know, superheroes, and everybody else supervillains. They can do no wrong. I'm going to actually jump out of order here and just read you. I can't read you directly from the book. I'm just going to summarize one part on page 160. This is out of chapter 7. You know what the name of chapter 7 is? Race in the Royals. This should put in perspective how biased this thing is. You ready? All right. He's talking about Meghan Markle, and he calls it the arrival of Suits actress Meghan Markle. Can you imagine if that's all you have? That and that soap story, all you have to hang your hat on, so that's what you're referred to as. But yeah, she wears it as a badge of honor. Okay. The arrival of Suits actress Meghan Markle. He goes on to explain. I don't want to read from the book because, again, Omid, he goes after people. All right. So I'm going to tell you in a nutshell. He explains it's her arrival that piqued his personal, to Omid, his interest in the royal story. Okay, so there's that. He's interested in her from the get-go. He says she was a smart, accomplished, biracial American woman. He calls her confident. He calls her optimistic. He talks about her being Californian, joining he calls it 1,000-year-old family of hereditary power. He goes into it being basically a stodgy institution not known for its openness and tolerance. So just let that sink in. He paints Meghan as just this heroic figure, this ray of sunshine that arrived in this dark, cobwebbed, awful family, right? To save the day. Who could possibly have helped write that? Oh, I know, Meghan did. This is the most, it's bullshit is what it is. It's complete and total work of fiction and bullshit. He's calling himself a journalist. I don't know what he's calling himself. And that's not what it is. This is an article for 17 magazine about why we all love Meghan Markle. It's not any substance. There's nothing here. There's no real sources. There's no real stories. It's just, I hear my sources say, but it's like bullshit. Like, my sources say that Meghan hung the sun and the royal family tried to rip it down. I mean, just like, what? What are we talking about? Give me something. It's the same with the Oprah interview. If you're going to make claims like this, give me something. Tell me what we're talking about. Tell me something of substance. It's not a lie that you can prove actually happened. They can't do it. They cannot do it. They just go to claims to try to make people uncomfortable without any real substance. And that's what this book is. That's where we're at. Okay. Sorry, 4-minute rant about this, but all right, we're going to get into this. So chapter 5 is called Baggage, and I can sum this up in about 30 seconds. All right. I've said it before. This book has been nothing so far. I know it's coming for Catherine and William, of course, Prince and Princess of Wales, but right now it's all swings at Charles. It's like, I don't wish this on Charles for him to read this, but I actually hope he reads this, or I hope somebody gives him the low points. It's not that I want to hurt Charles. It's that I want him to know Okay, so his son, Harry, is claiming that he didn't help write this book or didn't have any part of it. We can see through it. It's bullshit because it's basically spare two, spare harder. Um, oh, people have pointed out this book is 400 something pages, and allegedly that's something like what Harry said is he could write another 400 something, I don't know, something like that, pages um, of spare that he cut out. And so people think, oh, well, here it is in this form. It wouldn't shock me. Everything is written from Harry and Meghan's point of view. I've never seen a more ass-kissy book. I've seen people write, I don't know, help ghostwrite memoirs for people that are not this. They can do no wrong. I mean, even in memoirs, you'll have the celebrity talk about, I don't know, battles with addiction or whatever it is. I'm just talking off the cuff here. You know, like personal struggles. Yeah, Harry and Meghan apparently have none. They can do nothing wrong ever. You name it, they're perfect at it. Oh, I can prove it. You ready? Sorry, I'm jumping here. Back into chapter 7, we're going to get into it about the race stuff. He doesn't even acknowledge that Harry did wrong. And you know what I'm talking about, the costume of it all. Instead, he praises Harry and calls it a racial awakening is what Harry's had. And that he's the first royal in history to acknowledge his white privilege. Okay. All right. Then he paints their leaving as something of extreme significance and meaning because he's standing up for, you know, all these claims that Omid's making, this racial injustices. What? Tell me how. Again, give me one example. That guy dressed up like a you-know-what that I can't say here on YouTube. You know what I'm talking about. And yet he's going to he's trying to get a pat on the back because for leaving the royal family? What are we talking about? This is the most biased, unbelievable piece of nonsense. Okay. But back to chapter 5. The reason I bring this up is because I'm telling you, this thing cannot acknowledge anything bad that Harry and Meghan have done. It's only the grievances against the royal family. And honestly, it's the grievances against Charles. This is a sickness at this point. You know, I get stuck, and I am stuck on how Meghan tends to have obsessive behavior toward Catherine, Princess of Wales. I've been through a million examples. You can watch any of my videos where I talk about it. I'm calling it now. This is obsessive behavior of Harry toward King Charles. And I've said before, it's not that I'm a diehard King Charles fan. I am a diehard Catherine fan. Love her. I'm fine with Charles. I respect his position. I honestly, I'm okay with Charles. I don't know how else to say it. I'm fine. I'm not a diehard fan. I'm not just going to blindly stand up for him. But I will say it's unfair. It really is the way that they're painting him. It is. And so that's where, again, a long rant for me to say, I hope it gets back to Charles because this is awful what they're doing. They're sitting here claiming all these horrible things happened to Meghan and, oh, it's awful how they treated her, and yet pay no mind of how they're actually treating the family. Well, both families, but I'm talking about his family here, right? Again, in the same breath of, oh, poor victim Meghan, they're being horrible to Charles. They're being horrible to Catherine, Princess of Wales. They're being horrible to William and Camilla and a lot of them. And no word about that. That's, again, this is just a work of fiction. Okay. So back to Charles. They call him in this book, and I'm saying they because it's the three of them. I know they like to go after people. They always say, we didn't work together. So they allege, according to them, they didn't work together, but I'm calling bullshit. In my opinion, they did. They call Charles indecisive. They call him temperamental. They point out that they claim that he's often in the middle of sticky situations. Now, I can think of a few. I'm sure you can too. But what are we talking about? I don't think it's him in the middle of sticky situation. Again, I'd say, what about Harry and Meghan? Aren't they always creating the situations and then throwing themselves in the middle of it? It just kills me that they do these awful things to the family that come after them. And then they in my opinion, they have their people put out stories like, oh, look, Meghan tried to offer an olive branch. An olive branch for what? She's the one that kicked up the shitstorm. You can't be the bad guy and then try to be like, oh, I can fix it. I just stole your car, but I don't know. I put some gas in it. So I'm a hero, right? No, you stole the car. You don't get to be the hero. I don't know if that analogy makes sense, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. All right, let's move on. Again, in chapter 5, really goes hard after Charles even more. It goes over and over, brings it up a couple of times. And I've discussed in other videos, so I'm not really going to go into it here, but about the Cash for Honor scandal. And repeats it over and over, really trying to bring Charles down. And in fact, what's weird to me is, again, in chapter 7, which we'll get to when he talks about Meghan, he's like, they just constantly try to bring her down a peg. She wasn't grateful enough for her experience, so they're trying to knock her down. Again, I'd say, what are you trying to do with Charles? And we'll get to the others, but right now, in this section of the book, chapter 5, what are you trying to do with Charles, if not bring him down a peg by bringing up, bad things from the past, like the Camilla of it all. And yes, they do go into the Diana and Camilla of it all, but honestly, I'm over that. Like, I'm not going to go back through that. I know they love to rehash it. I'm good. Like, I honestly, you want my honest opinion? I've said it before. I think all 3 of them were probably in the wrong. I know Diana's on the record as saying she was wrong for her part in it. And I think Charles said something similar. And again, I'm not standing up for any of the 3 of them. I just think at this point, like, we're good. We're past it. However many years, like, I don't know, 20 something years later, like, what are we doing? So again, in the same breath of saying, oh, the palace is trying to be mean toward Meghan, they're trying to bring her down a peg, I'd say, again, what is this book doing? But trying to bring Charles down about 30 pegs. And again, I know it's coming for the others, but right now it's just Charles, mostly, that they're going after. They call him a busybody. They accuse him of campaigning. They accuse him as interfering with political processes. I'm around page 94 if you're trying to follow along. Please don't follow along. Don't buy this book. Again, library. All right. Anyway, so that's chapter 5. It's called Baggage. Honestly, it's just a smear campaign against Charles, and that's why I do hope, I'm not trying to wish ill on Charles. It's not that. I hope he knows how bad this is, because going into this thing, again, I tried to not read reviews because I want to bring you guys my honest review. And my honest review is, like, I had no idea how bad they were coming for Charles. How much the 3 of them apparently, according to me, my opinion, they hate Charles. That's exactly that's what we've got through chapter 5 so far. Chapter 6. All right. I'm just going to tell you the title is Andrew, and I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not covering it. I don't want to talk about it. It's not that I'm covering up anything. I've said my opinion before in videos. I just don't think that this, I'm trying to think of how to say this. I think they use this Andrew thing in, this whole thing as a way to say, hey, we're not as bad as that. Or to try to distract from the awful things that Harry and Meghan did. So I'm not going to play that game. I will gladly tell you my thoughts on Andrew and the whole situation, but not here. Because I'm focused on talking about how Harry, Meghan, and Omid wrote this smear campaign against the royal family. And bringing up others' awfulness, whatever you believe happened there. It's 2 separate issues. And I don't think it belongs here. So I'm going to skip that. Chapter 7. All right. This is the big bad one. Here we go. It's called Race in the Royals. All right. I mean, I read you the example of what this chapter is. It's all about painting Meghan the victim, painting Meghan as this perfect creature who came into this family ready to work hard and just all the things, right? She's perfect. Everybody else is awful, but she's perfect. Nobody would help her, but she's perfect. It just is ludicrous at this point. It really is. And, no wonder I've heard so many people question this book. It's a work of fiction. It really is. It's just totally repainting history. Omid throws around the word ignorance about 100 times in this chapter. He calls the family ignorant. He calls it ignorance and casual racism, which I find that term offensive. Ignorance and bias is another thing he throws around a lot. He blames the royal family as well as the press for, all the ignorance and bias. Again, where have we heard that? Oh, yeah, Harry and his sick obsession with the press. Wonder why I think they work together. He goes on to give a glowing review, page 147, about Harry and Meghan and their Netflix special. And yet, my God. Okay. Again, they can do nothing wrong. He goes into how in 2016, Harry had to write a letter to the press. You know the story. I've been over this story. Saying, leave Meghan alone, right? And how, again, they're victims. Everybody else is awful. And it was an extraordinary thing for the palace to do, right? And it was an extraordinary thing for Harry to do. Because I'm choosing my words carefully here. All right. Here's my beef with this whole thing. So again, it's okay for Harry to try to stand up for Meghan, right? However misguided it is. It's okay for him to write a letter to the press saying, leave her alone. But yet in this book, they will not leave the royal family alone. They will not stop coming for Charles. And again, I'm not standing up for Charles. I'm just saying they just can't see the hypocrisy. Again, it's all about leave Meghan alone. Let me remind you that I had to stand up for her before, and we're still standing up for her. Okay, except for you're fine harassing Catherine, Princess of Wales. That's totally fine with you. No problem. Fine putting it in print. Fine bringing up horrible nicknames of her in the past. Fine with even small details like she prefers Catherine, so we'll call her Kate. Bringing up, making up, in my opinion, horrible nicknames about her. Talking about not the Weighty Katie, because I know that was something they called her, but the Katie Keene. Okay. And turns out that's from an Archie comic. You can imagine who had their hand in that. Again, Meghan on record talking about loving Archie comics, but nobody can find record of that. But again, they call her names in this book. They're fine harassing Catherine, but yet when it comes to Meghan, leave her alone. It's just unbelievable. All right, let's keep going. They're completely rewriting history. They even talk about Meghan joining the family and says that she turned down help. Okay, we all know this story. It's that allegedly, according to all the other books we've read, everybody else agrees with this story except for Meghan. Imagine that the Queen had offered, I believe it was Sophie, because the Queen had such a special bond with Sophie. She offered Sophie to help Meghan. And Meghan said something very flippant along the lines of, no, I'm good. I got Harry. All right. But now they're rewriting history saying Meghan turned down help because she was offered help from Lady Susan Hussey. And she turned it down because she could sense it just wasn't a good idea. And let me explain. She's talking about it in terms of race. She felt like, again, this is Omid's words. I have to choose this carefully. I'm not going to read from the book. Just know it's around page 147. And it's rewriting history to say, basically in a nutshell, in my opinion, what he's trying to say here is that he's picking somebody who's been in the press. Some people argue it was, some people argue it wasn't. Take your stance how you will. Lady Susan Hussey, Google it, see what I'm talking about. The history there, the controversy. And so Meghan's repainting this as, look who they were trying to put as my helper, huh? Somebody with some controversy around her name. And that's why she turned it down. It's all bullshit. Nothing is their fault. Nothing. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right. Page 154, they go into, again, bashing Charles. They're saying that they couldn't, basically, in a nutshell, they couldn't trust Charles's people not to leak things to the press. He said that things leak quickly, especially from Harry's father's camp. Who could you be talking about? Crazy. Just more crazy stuff. All right, page 154. This is where things get even more ridiculous. Ready? I'm starting to lose my voice. Okay, I made a cup of tea. I'm much better. Here we go. So, page 154. Again, talk about rewriting history. So they talk about Meghan and how staffers started to say, who does she think she is? Well, guess what? Instead of addressing potential awfulness from Meghan, he repaints it as, oh, see, that's a race issue. No, it's not. No, it's not. You're making it a race issue where it doesn't exist. We've heard countless stories, and they're all similar stories about her awful attitude and her awful treatment of those around her, and especially women. Again, if you don't believe me, look at all the people that have quit working for her and have had things to say about, again, her treatment. But again, it's being repainted as, oh, it's a race thing. By questioning who does she think she is, it's a way to be racist, basically, is what he's trying to say. All right. So then he goes into, he's painting it as that Meghan was treated as if she wasn't good enough to be in the family. All right. Once again, I say, don't let facts stand in your way. Wasn't she invited to things that Catherine wasn't invited to before they were married, but then they made exceptions and allowances for Meghan? In my personal opinion, he doesn't talk about this, my personal opinion is because she was spinning sob stories about being estranged from her family, right? Because it was all part of the plan. So they're like, well, fine, you can come have Christmas with us, whatever. But it just is unbelievable. They extended extra hospitality toward Meghan that sounds like it wasn't extended toward Catherine, and yet still not good enough, still thrown around the eastwards. Unbelievable. So why was she included in events before the marriage then if Catherine wasn't, if it's that she wasn't good enough to be in the family? Omid says it stinks of prejudice and privilege because he doesn't have any facts to go on, so why not throw around that stuff some more, right? All right. Then it continues on. Is that, so we get the same, again, this is where Spare 2 comes into play, because in Spare, Harry goes on that in Australia, they were rock stars. They were so popular, and they had some serious star power. Well, guess what? That's what Omid says, too. They were amazing. They had star power. Everybody else was jealous. Yeah, try to get through that without laughing. Yeah, I can't either. He called them up there with the Queen in terms of popularity. Let that sink in. Now, there was a time back in the day, I remember, where Harry was up there in popularity, but it's because the palace was covering for him, and we couldn't see what a prick he was, right? Oh, we can see it now. We can see you, Harry. And again, he goes into, they were trying to bring them down a peg, talking about Harry and Meghan, because they're the victims. They were too popular and the royal family couldn't stand it. Again, it just makes no sense. No evidence given, no credibility lended to these stories, just stories written down. Okay. He goes into, again, he doesn't even go into details. He just prints that Catherine made Meghan cry with not really any more details than that. Okay. So again, he just thinks by printing it, it makes it true. It's his truth, right? So they're claiming bias through this whole thing and the reporting of it, and yet they're clearly showing bias because they can't give any facts or any other sides to the story. It's only that they can do no wrong. He even goes after Angela Kelly, and the reason this is interesting is because why does Omid care? Oh, wait, he doesn't. It's Harry and Meghan that care. Meghan still holds beef against Angela about the tiara of it all from the wedding, and we know Harry went after her and called her some pretty awful stuff in Spare. So imagine that. Omid also has beef with Angela Kelly. It's wild. And then again, Omid says it was easy for him to see the manipulation for what it was. So again, no real facts here, just throwing these vague, like, racial allegations around, but with nothing to back it up. So honestly, all I could think of is, oh, this is for the sugars. They don't need to have facts or any actual information. If you just throw out allegations, they just believe it and go with it, and there you go. So to me, that's all this book is for people who are just following them blindly without doing any actual, I don't know, digging, research, homework, any of the things, right? He tried to spin the staff leaving. He goes into all the people that left working for Meghan as not her fault, that it was fine. And I'm thinking, again, no, that is not the story we got in any of the other books. I just don't think it's that whole thing where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't think all these people writing about the events with similar stories to tell are making it up. I think this one lone person, Omid, who's working with Harry and Meghan, he's the one that's making this shit up. He's the one with the agenda here, again, to paint Harry and Meghan as, I don't know, perfection. It just doesn't make any sense. He calls any criticism toward Meghan a pile on. And again, I ask, okay, then if that's the case, what would you say she was doing toward Catherine, Princess of Wales? Wouldn't that be considered a pile on? I would. He paints Meghan as suffering and a victim and that no one would help her. And I've asked this a million times, and I know you have too. What about her idiot husband? Why wasn't he helping her? He claims to know about, I don't know, mental health issues and all this, but yeah, he couldn't get her help. Okay. Doesn't make any sense. Again, why back it up with facts or any kind of information? Just throw these claims out there. Omid makes it about himself and starts listing some racial related attacks that he received, including some messages he received, and then talks about Meghan calling him and how wonderful she is because she heard that he was suffering too. So she called him, but yet claims to not, be friends with her or be working with her? Okay. And then goes out of his way to claim that, once again, the palace would not help her. So much more. I mean, I think I've hit my max of BS for this episode. We're 30 minutes in. This is just beyond ridiculous. There's no actual reporting here. It's not even unconscious bias. It's straight up bias on the part of Omid, covering for Harry and Meghan and completely rewriting history to suit them. So I'm going to end it here. I love all the comments. You guys keep saying, oh, I can hear the frustration in your voice. I'm sure you could hear it this episode. We're halfway through this book now. Can you believe it? Still got half of the book to go. But thank you for sticking with me on this. I'll continue to talk about it. You guys keep leaving me your feedback and your comments and let me know your thoughts on this one. I can't wait to read it. As always, I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for spending your time with me. Thank you for watching and supporting, for all the lovely comments, the thumbs up, all of it helps. It really does. If you want to further support the show, of course, we have merch. We have Not Bloody Likely. Again, it makes sense with this book. Recollections may vary. A very nice way of putting it. All the things. Also, we have Patreon, patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps, where I do bonus deep dives, episodes. We got stuff coming out about every other day over there, so check that out. And you can become an executive producer just like the lovely geese and ganders you see before you on the screen right here. Thank you for everything. I would say I can't wait to bring you more like this, but I can't wait to stop talking about this damn book and move on to other stuff. But we'll stick with it for now. Thank you for everything. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.